Driving the Nürburgring has always been a dream of mine. After months of planning and preparing the GTI, the day had finally arrived. Our alarms went off at 4:30 AM and we set off for the Channel Tunnel at 5. We all met up on the M4 and started our 3-hour drive down to Folkestone. It didn't take long for the first mistake of the trip. Kieran and I missed the turn for the M25 and ended up staying on the M3, so we had to double back and catch up with Joe before making it to Folkestone. We arrived at around 8:30, boarded the train at 10, and before long, we were in France. After regrouping, we headed towards Belgium. Kieran had also discovered that his air conditioning had given up, which made the slow crawl around Brussels even less enjoyable. We stopped for some famously expensive Dutch fuel just before crossing into Germany as the rain began. We enjoyed our first taste of the Autobahn just before the weather turned into a proper thunderstorm with torrential rain, lightning and thunder all around us. We also encountered a tunnel, and I think you all know what that means. And then onto the de-restricted Autobahn, and of course, we did a couple top speed runs. The closer we got, the more surreal it felt. Driving through Adenau and seeing roads and landmarks I'd watched online for years was one of those moments that didn't quite feel real. After the obligatory photos of the Nurburgring sign, we headed to the apartment, unpacked and tried to get some sleep. The next morning, we were pleasantly woken by the sound of cars racing around, setting times for qualifying for the NLS race. We walked to the boulevard to grab some tickets and went to the grandstand to watch the remainder of the qualifying.
Sektor 3 bei Christian Koch, Sektor 4 war auch schnell. Der müsste in jedem Moment überkommen, Christian Koch. Deswegen war auch Aston Martin in der Mittelentscheidung wählen. Ganz knapp, Bachler.
Once qualifying had finished, we went off exploring the pits, where we even managed to pick up a few used race tyres as souvenirs. We returned to the grandstand for the race start. Then headed out to Hutzenbach to experience the cars from trackside. After a quick Lidl run for supplies, we settled back in to watch the finish. Touristenfarten was due to open for an hour that evening, so we headed up to Devil's Diner car park to get ready to go up for our first laps. However, to my disappointment, the track remained closed, so we headed back to the apartment for dinner. We rounded off the day exploring the hotel and rental car parks before ending the night at the esports bar where a few laps on the simulator made us more excited for the following morning. The next day was the big one, my first laps of the Nürburgring. My very first lap deserves its own story. We'll come back to that in the next video. After finally taking to the track, I then watched my friends complete their own first laps from Brunchen before heading back out. In between sessions, we explored the industrial park, visiting places like Mantai, Vulcan Alpha and Track Speed, and spent time soaking up the atmosphere around the Devil's Diner car park. By the end of the day, I'd completed 5 laps. With the final one coming just before closing time in beautifully clear conditions, managing the quickest time of the day. We celebrated with dinner at Mk7.5 GTI and another evening admiring the cars tucked away in the underground car parks. Our final full day started with a wander around the boulevard and the all-important purchase of a Nürburgring sticker. A small navigational mishap meant we ended up joining the queue for the track a lot sooner than expected, but it worked out perfectly. All of us were on track together for the first and only time that trip. Afterwards, we again returned to Devil's Diner, where we watched someone take their 918 Spider onto the circuit. One last lap later, despite yellow flags and safety cars, I set my personal best of the trip. Back at the apartment, we finished the evening with dinner and relieved the day by scrolling through photos of our cars online. The final morning was spent picking up a few last souvenirs and returning the tyre pressures to road settings before beginning the journey home. Brussels traffic made one last appearance. And before we knew it, we were back in the UK. The Nürburgring somehow managed to exceed every expectation I'd built up over the years. And before we'd even got home, I was already thinking about the next trip back. Looking back, I couldn't really have asked for much more from the car. Over the course of the trip, it completed all of the laps without missing a beat. The brakes were perfect. Even after repeated laps, they stayed consistent with no noticeable fade, which is exactly what I'd hoped for after fitting the DS2500 pads, braided lines and RBF 660 fluid. The suspension was another highlight. The BC Racing coilovers gave the car loads of confidence through the faster sections, and it felt really composed over the bumps and compressions that the Nürburgring is famous for. The only thing that really struggled was the oil temperature. Towards the end of the laps, it was creeping past 130 degrees, which is definitely higher than I'd like. So before the next trip, an oil cooler has moved right to the top of the modifications list. Apart from that though, the car handled everything I threw at it. It drove over 500 miles to Germany, spent days being driven hard on track, and drove all the way home again without any issues. Honestly, I don't think I could have asked for a better first Nürburgring experience.